Hey there. So my next guest, one of the founders of the gameHERs Awards. This was an awesome interview. She is just so full of knowledge and information about, business. She's a true business person, and that she comes at the gaming space a lot like I do, kind of from the outside. And so you get to hear her talk about coming in and learning about the industry and kind of the issues she didn't think were going to be there and the issues she did that didn't turn out to be. Really fun interview. I know you're all going to love it. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Rebecca Dixon. Hey there, Rebecca. How's it going?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. And where do you hail from, Rebecca?
I'm in New York City.
Wonderful. So hopefully you've gotten over the hurricane coming through.
Yes. Yep. It was unexpected and luckily fine for us, but it was a little nuts.
I'm sure. I don't have to deal with that too much in Las Vegas. Every now and then we get a monsoon and just washes everything away. But
yeah, we're all good. Excited to get into the fall season and great to be here.
Beautiful. All right. Well, why don't we begin? I don't like doing a lot of small talk. So why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Rebecca Dixon. I am one of the 4 co-founders of the gameHERs. And we are a media platform and social network for women who game and women who work in the gaming industry. We launched in March of 2020, right along with COVID, but it turned out to be a great time to launch, I think, a company in this industry and on this topic, because it was much needed for sure. We've had a really a nice sort of 18 months in the industry and a great response from women and men and companies and, organizations and brands. And I think it's just been wonderful to have the opportunity to honor, amplify, celebrate, uplift all of the initiatives that are positive for women and be a hub for those. And like I said, a media platform, and then also look for the white space and see where we can fill in. So yeah, that's me. And that's a little bit about us. And I can certainly go into more detail about some of the exciting things that we have happening right now.
And we will. I have to say, though, that's a little shocking. You only started, the beginning of last year, because I think I voted in your inaugural poll for who should be awarded that.
Yeah. Well, we're actually in the middle of our second Gamer Awards right now, and they're going incredibly, viral, which is wonderful. Last year when we launched the awards, that is the event and the initiative that really, I think, put us kind of on a lot of radars throughout the industry. And, at the end of the day, it showed us that what we had sort of originally set out to do in honoring and providing opportunities to showcase women was actually something that needed to be done. And then there was a huge desire to do it. So last year we had 600 nominations in about a month, which we were thrilled with. That translated to tons of votes. And we ended up on the front page of Twitch and just got so much positive response from the industry and from everybody. And then this year we look at last year, and I mean, we are absolutely floored that we're in the middle of it. So we don't even know how big it's going to be, but we have had so many nominations before so far that we're just thrilled. We have a lot of organizations partnering with us, and it's a real moment in time where I think there's been a lot of desire to sort of not just right the wrongs, but also to say, like, look, there actually are a ton of women doing incredible things all throughout the industry at all different levels. And let's talk about them. So yeah, it's been really
just
fun.
So incredible. And like, we'll talk more about it in a second. Before I start every interview, though, I begin with a single question. So I'm going to ask you, just like I ask everybody else. And you told me before we started, you watched my show, so you kind of what this question is. But on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Rebecca?
I don't know. I think we're all weird, to be honest. Everybody's weird in their own way. But yeah. I don't know. 5. I'll go middle. 5.
Perfect. That's my answer too, because I have the same answer as you.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little bit strange in their own unique way. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is the Gamerpreneur podcast, so I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
So I'm a child of the 80s. And so I grew up initially on, I first started playing like Atari, but or I'm really a child of the late 70s, I should say, if I'm being honest here. But yeah, so for Atari was my first, and now I have progressed to playing with my own children. We play Among Us at in our family, and so that's my kind of beginning and end gaming cred. But I think the real sort of level of credibility that I and my team has is actually more around community building in communities for women. Not necessarily, I mean, we're in the gaming industry and that's super important. But it's an interesting topic to discuss because historically a lot of people in the gaming industry were really, definitely came from being huge hardcore gamers. And I think one of the things that we've been able to discuss a lot in terms of job creation for not only women, but women and men, is that there's so many careers in the gaming industry that are not necessarily just specific to gaming. And so that's a great thing for women to think about if they are gamers, but might not necessarily think about developer is a great career. Pro esports is a great career, but so are all the other ancillary jobs, just like in any industry, sports, music, there's a whole industry around the key piece of it.
Absolutely. So let's jump over real quick. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your professional background? How did you end up here?
Sure. I started as a media buyer, traditional media buyer at an agency in New York. And then I switched over in that same business to the sales side. I worked at CBS and Turner, and I did ad sales for television. After that, I entered the entrepreneurial world and I partnered up with my current co-founders and honed our skills in exactly what I said before, community building around women. It was in a completely different industry from this one. It was in the parenting world. So we had a company that was a community for expectant and new parents. It also had a matchmaking platform for parents and caregivers. And we sold that company in 2016 to a media company in New York and had some very strong adjacencies to the gaming industry, which led us to learn very quickly about women in that industry. And so we thought, we did kind of a deep dive into the industry. Obviously, like we've been talking about, there are a lot of incredible women who are doing great things. There are a lot of great nonprofits supporting, various initiatives to try to create, whether it's scholarships and white papers and mental health support and all of the sort of various initiatives that they have, and a lot of great executives mentoring and speaking on panels. What we felt like that we could create that was a little bit different and has so far, worked really well is a media platform. We're a for-profit company because we feel that this so-called needle for women in gaming cannot be moved without the whole industry behind it, and that takes resources. And so, from the esports organizations to the publishers to the brands to the nonprofits, the women, the gamers, the students, everybody. We felt that, we like to call ourselves a for-purpose company, and that with the resources to amplify all of those existing initiatives, that we could make a difference. So that's how I got here personally and what we're doing.
All right. That's wonderful. Now, so you sold your prior business and then you moved into the gaming space, but was there a particular impetus that made you all decide gaming and women, that was like the place, or did you like have other options?
Yeah. So, it's an interesting story that gets into our personal lives, but that's fine. That's how careers often go. After selling our company, we're a bunch of women entrepreneurs who are also interested in community building and women's around women. And so we were kind of thinking about what we wanted to do next. I had a very strong connection to the gaming industry in that my extended family is part of the original and still ownership group of Team Envy and the Dallas Fuel. So esports and gaming had been something that, I had been following and interested in from just the sidelines for a number of years before even the word esports was something that everybody talked about, even if you were not connected to it at all. I feel like that's still a little bit recent. Back in 2015, 2016, it wasn't that way. And so after selling my company, I just sort of started really paying attention to it and looked at the size of the gaming industry, the growth of the gaming industry, and then the percentage of women. And it's like, that's like a pretty big industry for half of it to be women, whatever statistic you want to use, but it's around half, pretty solidly. And so how is that possible? Like to this day, by the way, I have pretty much at least one conversation a day where somebody still doesn't believe that. But it's widely accepted for sure in the industry. It's probably underreported because a lot of women game without their voice commands on. So if anything, it's probably, higher than reported. And so seeing that, it just kind of, it made me want to do more research. So at the same time as, that was kind of happening, one of my co-founders from my old and current company, she went sort of from the parenting world to the toy world and was doing some toy design in the video gaming industry with Al Khan, the visionary behind Pokemon. So she ended up at a bunch of video game and licensing and toy expos and conferences and found the same thing. She's like, wait a second, there are no women here, but I keep reading and researching that women are half of this industry. Like, what is going on? So that led the two of us to do that, that sort of deep dive I mentioned earlier. And by the way, we are certainly not the first people to acknowledge that this is that it was a situation that existed. We're not the first or the best or anything. We just felt like we had a model that we could come in and sort of amplify everything that was already happening and then try to create more visibility and kind of more acknowledgement of the normalcy of women in this industry. So those were the connections that led us here. And they're unique, but they are our story.
All right. That's awesome. Okay. Now, gameHERs, you've been at this for about a year and a half or so. Have you faced any challenges in your time doing this?
No, I mean, we're a startup. I think the challenges, we have challenges constantly. We don't have some of the challenges we thought we might have. A lot of people, when we first came into the industry, warned us that, everybody looks at the size of the gaming industry just like we did and sees like, oh, let me see how I can monetize on that. And that, there would be trust.
That's what I did.
I think that, the trust issues haven't really been a problem for us because we're pretty transparent. We also are very, very upfront about our background and what we bring to the table and what we don't bring to the table. So, I knew coming into this that you were going to ask me for my gaming cred because you ask everyone that. That's great. And I can answer it the way I did. But that being said, like, we're not 4 hardcore gamers who experienced the problem that we're trying to solve. The reality is the women who were gaming weren't in a position or didn't have the experience that we had to potentially help solve it. What we were able to do is look at an industry-wide problem and say, this may not be the solution, but we think it could be a part of, the bigger solution. And it doesn't look like anyone's doing it. And so, here's what we bring to the table. We know how to build communities by creating unique quality content. We are big believers in partnering with, like-minded organizations. We will get asked very frequently about, who are our competitors. And to be honest, we really have yet to find competitors. We have the gamer awards, for one thing, honor women all across the industry, organizations across the industry. The problem, the quote unquote problem that we are trying to help be a part of the solution for is so widespread that there frankly is room for everybody. And so that was what we thought would be our biggest challenge, and actually wasn't a challenge. We've been well accepted. The challenges have been more in figuring out, almost on an operational level. Like, here's one challenge it's very real time, is the success of the nomination period of our awards this year was so wonderful and big that we had to figure out how to manage the extremely large number of nominations we got. It's a good problem to have, but it is a challenge because, if somebody nominates someone else, someone's got to get back to that person and make sure they accept the nomination. And we didn't realize how big these were going to be. So we don't have an automated system. We will next year for sure. So I think we're just trying to stay true to our mission of the for-purpose company while growing, because again, the problem is so big and so widespread that moving it a little bit here and there isn't going to fix it. Like hiring a couple of women in C-suite jobs is not it's certainly great. And it's part of the solution, and it's a little part of the solution. And there's, people will ask, do you need to start fixing this problem from like the younger ages, like in Girl Scouts and YMCAs, or do you need to go right to the pros? And the answer to that is yes, all of it. So, working on where we put our resources. I think a lot of our challenges are very similar to challenges of any sort of growing small business.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the for-purpose part of the gameHERs. So, what are the challenges that women are facing in the gaming industry? Is it, you mentioned a lack of business acumen, maybe they don't have the experience of being business people. Is it a marketing issue, or is it branding? Is it just sexism? Like, what are the primary issues that women are facing?
I mean, it's a spider web of challenges that exists on a number of levels. I think part of it is certainly related to challenges that exist in STEM and tech in general. You don't have as many girls, even after at least one, maybe 1.5 or 2 generations of initiatives to try to keep girls in STEM. It's not happening as much as as would be great. Also, for whatever reason, the view that gamers are, single guys in the basement is still like kind of widespread. And so girls gaming is still sometimes, certainly getting way better, but sometimes seen as just unusual. So part of it is changing that narrative. I mean, the challenges on a macro level are like women aren't represented in the industry. Like if 50% of a consumer base in terms of gamers is women, then why is the developer percentage so low? Why aren't, why aren't the C-suite and the managers and the VPs, why are they primarily men? Why are most of the protagonists men? I mean, that one isn't too surprising, because if you have mostly men in the room making the decisions, then of course it's going to seem natural that most of the protagonists should be men. And, it's very current. There are exposés and news articles and lawsuits coming out, consistently. And I think that there's a huge, alliance across the industry, an agreement of like that we need to fix this problem. There are tons of allies. We have, by the way, a lot of men in our community who are very supportive, which is necessary. But it's figuring out how do you change it. And so those are the challenges. That's not solution. Those aren't the solutions. The solutions are much longer term. And what we're trying to do is just sort of bring light from a media perspective to hopefully make the solutions easier. But I mean, I think I didn't even get into collegiate. You have esports scholarships, and I think just a small percentage of those go to women. There aren't nearly as many women in gaming clubs, and just all of the sort of normalcy around gaming for men doesn't exist for women. And then certainly the sex sexist aspects of it that you asked about, yeah, I mean, for sure, it's there. Often women, 70% of women gamers game without their voice commands on, because if they turn their voice on, they either get killed or kicked out or harassed or whatever. So that's a huge number, 70%. So
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's too bad. And I mean, it's much more than too bad. It's terrible. And I think that, hopefully I do see some, I see the potential for more brightness in the future, because the acknowledgement of it is there.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Rebecca, I'd like to talk about you a little more personally, if we can. You're incredibly accomplished. You've got an impressive resume. You've done amazing things. There's people out there who wish they could be you, but what makes you special? What makes you unique? That, if you could distill it down into a couple of words, what is that special sauce you have?
Oh my gosh, I think where we all end in our career is such a result of so many different things. It would be hard to narrow that down to anything. I'm no more special than anybody else. What I do think that is important in anybody's career, and what I would always say to young women who are trying to, let's say, get into the gaming or esports industry, is that hard work is number one. I think another important tool to use, certainly in this field, but I have found it useful throughout my entire career, and frankly, my personal life too, is networking and connecting with people. I mean, for the same reason that I'm happy to be chatting with you today, you never know where any sort of connections might lead, whether they're educational to teach you more about the industry, whether it's, another job interview. I'm always sort of refining how I actually do network. And an example of that is during the pandemic, as I was entering this relatively new industry for me, I, for the first time, really leaned into LinkedIn, and have found it so valuable. And so that's just an example of that. But yeah, I think hard work and networking, and just trying to find things that you are somewhat passionate about. I don't think we all have to be working exactly in our specific passion at all times. Sometimes careers can be, say they can go left and right a little bit before you figure out what actually works. But this is a good one, and it's great to be chatting with you about it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. We're not done yet. I'd like to hop in a time machine if I can with you, Rebecca. I'd like to go back into the past. And we're going to go back to a little girl playing on the Atari. Her name is Rebecca Dixon. And you get to go up to little Rebecca Dixon back then, and you get to tell her everything that happens in your life, all the ups, all the downs, all the good, all the bad. You get to impart upon her all of your wisdom and knowledge and experiences. That way she could have a bigger, better, more successful life, however you define that. But if there was only one thing you absolutely had to impart upon yourself back then, what would you tell yourself?
I forgot that you asked that question. It's good. I think that's a question that really gets into the combination between, or sort of the overlap between professional life and also personal well-being. I would say try to be present in every moment, because, we sort of only have the now. And so if you're present, just like, you and I are chatting here right now, and we're going to be finished in a few minutes, and hopefully you enjoyed our chat. And I certainly did. And often I think I often in the past have found myself worrying about what's to come or something that happened. And if we can focus on now, we'll probably be all more successful in both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. All right. I got one more question, and then we'll bring it in for a landing. You see, Rebecca, I actually believe we learn the most in our life from our failures, not necessarily our successes. When you succeed the first time you try something, you may not know what happened. But if you fail, you got to take a look at it. You got to figure out what went wrong, do some research, study until you can iterate, until you succeed in the future. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life? And what did you learn from it?
I think, this might not be the best answer to that question, but it really is what I think I would say, which is exactly the advice that I just gave. I didn't follow for many years. And so when you're always, I have learned how to live in the present more. And I just think it makes it so much easier to focus on work and life and personal relationships and everything. And so my tendency to worry a lot about things that have happened in the past, what other people think, what's going to happen in the future, how is it going to work, is actually just time taken away from what I could actually be doing right now. And that was a sort of a long-term thing that I have learned I have that wisdom only in my recent years, and it's been really, really valuable. So that is, I hate to answer them. I'm not taking the easy way out. It's just, it is the same answer for me, flipped around.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. No, Rebecca, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you so much. How do people find you? How do they reach out to you? Contact information,
Sure.
all that, please.
So the gameHERs are at thegamehers, which is TheGameHERs. So gamers with an H, everywhere. So on all the platforms, all the social networks. I am Rebecca Dixon, and I might be Rebecca Brock Dixon, actually. And I'm super active on LinkedIn primarily. I'm on Twitter, but a little less active. And also Rebecca at thegamehers.com. And I'm very open to connecting. Like I said, networking is one of my tools. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Now, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
I just, the gameHERs Awards are live and this fall. So I don't know. Actually, I just realized I don't know exactly when you post this recording of this.
This is coming out in a couple of days.
Oh, great. So starting on September 13th, you'll be able to vote for the nominations. And then the finalists will be a little bit after that. And the finale will be in November. So please follow it, because we have gotten so many incredible nominations. And the Gamers app, which I didn't mention, is launching also in this fall in October. And it will be a place where women who game can connect. So find us there. We'll be sharing more information about that as it's live.
Fantastic. All right, Rebecca Dixon, thank you so much for coming on with us today. I genuinely do appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. Great to chat. Have a nice afternoon.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.